Okay, more on trig graphs. Okay, this time I have given you a graph. Okay, so here's the graph I've given you, and I want you to develop the equation. So this is a transformation on cos. Okay, so the first thing we can talk about is the period of time that it takes to go through a cycle. Okay, so as you can see from here, I go down, and then I'd have to go back up to complete a cycle, right? So from 3 to 9 is half of a cycle, right? So that would be 6, so 12 equals the whole period. Okay, so how do we get the b value? The period equals 2 pi over the b, the compression. Okay, so 12 equals 2 pi over b, therefore b equals 2 pi over 12, or pi over 6. Okay, now let's talk about the d value. That is the midline. So if you think about 1 minimum, 11 maximum, okay, that's 10 apart, right? So go 5 each way. So then 6 is in the middle. So D makes this thing shift up 6. Okay, now to get the A, amplitude. So if we have 6, we then go 5 up, 5 down to get our min-max. So therefore A is 5. Okay, now we have to think about where our cos starts. So our cos starting is usually up at a height of 1, right? So that's our starting. So if this is the starting point, then it would have got moved right 3. So we have to think about a right 3 movement. Okay, so that means we're going to have to show a subtract 3 inside there, right? So our final answer would be y equals, and we did our a, so that's 5 cos of b x. To go right, we need to subtract 3, and then our midline was at 6. Okay, now what if I give you a word problem? Okay, a population has a max of 10,000 at year 8 of a study. Okay, so a max and 10 years later, so at 18, it reached a minimum of 2,000. Alright, so that's kind of the curve that we're talking about. Now we're going to develop an equation using sine. Okay, so here we go. Let's get our period first. Okay, so from 8 to 18, you can see that that was half of the cycle, right? Because they still need to go back up and get back to this original point. So this is 10, so really 20 would be the period. So b equals 2 pi over 20, so b equals pi over 10. Okay, Now let's get our D value, the midline. Okay, so 2,000 to 10,000, right? That's 8,000 apart. So go 4,000 each way, and our midline is at 6,000. And then our amplitude was that each min and max was 4,000 away from there. Okay. Now, let's talk about where we're going to be shifting this from. So if you wanted to, you could say that, right, this is our starting point. You could go from here, okay, or you could make your starting point here. Okay, but how do we find those x values there? So those x values would be in the middle of these increments. So for instance, this one would be 13, because these are 10 apart, so 5, 23, or 3. Okay, so an example would be y equals 4,000 sine pi divided by 10 x minus 3 plus 6,000, or you could have had, depending on where you put your starting point, x minus 23 to represent that you shifted it right 3 or you shifted it right 23. There's endless possibilities as well. Okay, or you could have talked about moving it the other way as well. Could have talked about moving it left.